Today's current crop of politicians are trampling on the Constitution and on the resolve of citizens to demand their rights under the pressure of a manufactured fear. The reality is that the COVID data just doesn't match the government's COVID narrative. Open your church. The church is essential.
A Los Angeles pastor issuing that rebuke to Democrat leadership over the crackdown on houses of worship. That pastor, John MacArthur of Grace Community Church, joins me now with more of that message that's gaining a lot of traction on social media. Pastor, thank you so much for being here on this Good Sunday morning. We appreciate it. Expand on your message that you have for other pastors and other Christians.
Well, it's pretty simple. There is a narrative floating around that there's this great grave danger in California, and so we shouldn't have church because we're going to spread death. Nobody believes that anymore. In fact, if you're between 50 and 64 in California, you have 1 in 19 million chances of dying from COVID. The rate of infection of COVID is 1/100th of 1%. There are something like 600 people in the hospital with COVID complications out of 40 million. And this is just a ridiculous narrative to try to match with reality and with facts. That doesn't square up. And so we're saying have church, meet with your church. And we've been doing it for weeks. We have about 7,000 to 8,000 people on a Sunday. And they're just normally pushed together, no masks, no social distancing, and we don't have anybody sick, and we haven't for a number of weeks.
So, Pastor, you've been in defiance. You've been encouraging other religious leaders to do the same. The question I have for you is the why. Why does the left yell about data and science, but when it's numbers like this, and especially people of faith and churches, did they insist on draconian lockdown measures? Why?
Well, there has to be an obvious underlying reason. You know, they don't mind masses of people, tens of thousands of people in the streets. Yeah, you know, the Black Lives Matter events and all of that. Those things are perfectly permissible, but they don't allow a church service. There's only one possible underlying reason, and that is that they favor one over the other. The problem with that is the Constitution favors religious freedom over anything else. We're not asking for equal treatment. We're asking for the preferred treatment that the Constitution gives us.
Absolutely. And the assemblies you're referring to are supposed to be peaceably assembled. Last time I checked, not a lot of criteria being met there often. When you mention, what are you preaching to your parishioners these days? What's the message in light of where we are with this as well?
Well, that's a really good question, Pete, and it's been a long siege. I've been preaching in this kind of environment for 6 months. So, you know, do the math. I've had to preach 30 different messages on all of these Sundays, 30 plus messages. So I've run the gamut, everything from why are there riots, who's behind the riots, how do we understand the collapse of our nation. I did a message a few weeks ago on is this a nation under God? That got an immense amount of traction. But primarily what we're trying to do initially is bring comfort to people. Mm-hmm. Once we realized that we weren't going to kill grandma and people were not going to die if we had church. And again, I remind you, we've had no one from our church in the hospital for almost 7 months.
Wow.
So once we knew that, I just wanted to encourage the people. And the encouragement came in such a profound way that at first a few hundred people came back after we started with social distancing because we were told people were going to die. So we backed off and we didn't have anybody there. A few weeks passed and people started coming on their own and just kept coming and coming. And then a few weeks ago, we had a Sunday, we invited the children back for the first time in 6 months. We had 1,000 kids show up on a Sunday. It's an incredible Sunday. We had balloons and little lollipops for the kids. And we've had a phenomenal time with all of this.
We got to leave it. Unfortunately, we got to leave it right there, Pastor. Staring down fear with the power of Christ. We love it. More Fox and Friends on the other.